Liverpool's record in the transfer market over the last few seasons has been absolutely extraordinary, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. How they do it, what goes on behind the scenes, and why it is so extraordinary the way they do it. And they do it all inside the framework of these PSR rules, which is another big factor these days in your whole transfer policy. But the underlying facts as to how we've got to where we've got are quite incredible. I'm going to go through them right now. As we know, we've spent 170 million quid so far this transfer window, and probably with more to come. And that's got other clubs bemused, confused, angry, jealous, you name it. Oh, they say they never spend any money. If we sign Isaac or equivalent, it could reach 300 million, which is a huge amount of money. But we're doing it all within the PSR rules, while other clubs, the likes of Man City, we know about them and their charges, Newcastle, Tottenham, Man United, are all flirting with those rules and trying desperately to stay within them. We haven't got that problem. So just to clarify, the PSR rules state that you're allowed to make losses over a 3-year period of 105 million quid. So about 35 million quid a season. You go over that and you're in trouble of violating the PSR rules, which could mean points deduction or worse. And teams have to submit their financial accounts every year by the end of June to show that they're actually in compliance with the PSR rules. But Liverpool only spent 35 million in the previous 12 months, and that was 25 million for Mamardashvili and 10 million for Chiesa. But if you look at the last 5 years of transfer windows for Liverpool, we have a net spend of £267 million. That's including the transfers that we've just done this pre-season. That works out to £53 million per season. 53. Less than the cost these days of one player. That's what we've been spending over the last 5 years. And look at the squad we have built in that 5-year period. These are the players that we've brought in. These are all in euros, by the way. Wirtz, 125 million euros. Frimpong, 40. Kerkez, 47. Mamardashvili, 30. Chiesa, 12. Szoboszlai, 70. McAllister, 42. Gravenberch, 40. Endo, 20. Nunez, 85. Gakpo, 42. Diaz, 54. Kanate, 40. That is an incredible squad of players that have been brought in over the last 5 seasons. That all adds up to 553 million quid. At the same period, the players who've left are Harry Wilson, 14 million euros, Shaqiri, 6 million, Mane, 32, Nico Williams, 20, Minamino, 15, Fabinho, 47, Henderson, 14, Vandenberg, 24, Carvalho, 23, Kwanzaa, 35, Kelleher, 15, and Trent, 10. The 221 million. So the net spend has only been just over 50 million quid per season. Extraordinary. Now, another thing worth mentioning is the gross spend as well as the net spend. Net spend's more important because that's the money you've recouped as well. But in terms of gross spend, since 23-24, the gross spend of all the teams in the Premier League, Liverpool are 7th. Here's the 6 above us. Chelsea have spent 866 million. Man City 556 million. Spurs 523. Man United 497. Brighton 415. And Arsenal 380. We're 7th at 375 million. But 7th place in terms of the spend since 23-24. But we're the champions. Some of them are finishing 15th and 17th. The net spend over the last 5 years, we're 6th. And just for the record, with £250 million spent less than Man United. Now, I want to talk about the role the academy plays in all of this. Many of us, including me, are disappointed when an academy player comes through the system from a very young age and is sold on. And Liverpool don't have a policy of bringing young players through with the goal of selling them on. If they're elite, if they're the best fit, if they're the best player, they stay. But for every Steven Gerrard, every Jamie Carragher, every Robbie Fowler, there are lots of players who don't make it and they move on to other clubs. They may do absolutely fine at other clubs, but they don't make it as a Liverpool player. So, just going back to that list, Harry Wilson, Nico Williams, Sepp van den Berg, Fabio Carvalho, Jarrett Kwanzaa, Quaveen Kelleher, all have come through the system and have been sold on. But those who don't make it become an essential source of revenue and a vital part of staying within the PSR rules. They cost nothing or cost very little. They're homegrown and then they're generally sold at a major profit. And that all factors in to this PSR model. Just an example, right, of recent, Kwanzaa and Kelleher have just moved on and they've pretty much funded the vast majority of the fees paid for Kerkez and Frimpong. And this is because the team in control of transfers and recruitment is absolutely undoubtedly the best in England and potentially the best in the world. And it's all due right now to the dream team that has been put together of Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes and Arne Slot. It started before that, which I'll get into, but right now they're the three masterminds behind all of this. Edwards and Hughes advise the manager about the players that they need for the particular style of football and what the coach wants. They do all the background work and they present the players to the coach. An example, Jurgen Klopp gets all the accolades in the world for putting together the trio of Sadio Mane, Bobby Firmino and Mo Salah, as he should. Probably one of the greatest trios, if not the greatest trio ever seen in the Premier League. But Klopp didn't want Salah. He didn't want him. Klopp wanted Julian Brandt, a German player he knew well. And it was actually under a fella called Ian Graham, along with Michael Edwards, who convinced Jurgen Klopp that you didn't want Brandt. Brandt wasn't the one. Mo Salah was the one. I'm going to get into the Mo Salah, Ian Graham thing in a little bit. So a little bit more about Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards. Richard Hughes has been Liverpool's sporting director since June of 2024, just over a year. His first job after retiring from football was he was brought on by Bournemouth as part of their recruitment team, working under Eddie Howe. You know that Eddie Howe, who's now the manager of Alexander Isak. Michael Edwards was the sporting director from 2016 to 2022. Then he left the club for a bit, but FSG rehired him into a promoted role of the chief executive football in 2024 as well. So that's where the dream team came about, of Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, and of course Arne Slot, who replaced Jurgen in 2024. Since those three have got together, they've been plotting and executing the assembly of a group of elite footballers who are going to be part of an elite football team. That's what they're doing. Every signing that they make is designed to fit into this magnificent machine that they're building of elite footballers becoming an elite football team. All of this while spending less and being more fiscally responsible than all the other so-called big teams in the English league. And how did they do it? They do it with the use of data and statistics, and it is quite extraordinary what they do. Liverpool is literally leading the world of football in its use of data and analysis and statistics for performance. They focus on specific metrics that predict a player's future performance. And this approach, as I say, started with Ian Graham and Jurgen. And Jurgen was sceptical about it all at first, but he bought into it big time, over time. And it became more and more pronounced, and it is now built into the fabric of the club. And Arne Slot didn't need convincing because he was already a proponent and a champion of doing it this way anyway. So Liverpool developed what they call a possession value model to assess all players. And only those who meet the highest specific data criteria make the grade. In terms of tactics and in-match analysis, they analyse opponent formations, playing styles, pattern of play, and then they develop our own tailored strategies and our own tailored formations to combat those of the opposition. It's why you'll see an Arne Slot team during a game tactically change, not just once, maybe not just twice, sometimes several times within a game. He's there at the side analysing everything and putting a new action plan in play depending on what the opposition are doing. Compare that to some managers of some other clubs who are like, I play a 3-4-3 and that's what I'm going to do, and no one's going to stop it, and I'm not going to change for anybody. It's night and day. They even use what's called tracking and event data to understand our players' actions on the field impact the probability of scoring a goal. I told you, it's absolutely fascinating what they do. Another thing is, in terms of use of all of this data, is remember last season when everybody talked about poor Man City and poor Arsenal and they've had all these injuries, poor Man United, they just keep getting injuries, it's such bad luck. But you know what Liverpool do? They use wearable technology, sensors and the like, during training, which feed back data on player fatigue and physical performance. That in turn optimises the training regime and the training intensity that the fitness staff use in order to prevent injuries. So it's not luck. It's not luck that we had less injuries. It's a scientific approach that prevents injuries. I want to go back to Klopp for a second. I told you he was sceptical about the use of data because he hadn't really done it before, especially when it came to a data-driven approach to tactics. But he was open to it, and he started to see the results of it, and then he ultimately embraced it. And it was a Cambridge graduate, Ian Graham, who I mentioned earlier, who was the driver of it. So Ian Graham was interviewed. You might have seen the interview, but what he said was that what they had to take to Klopp, because he was committed to getting Julian Brandt, is they proved to him using data that Salah had a higher ceiling going forward than Brandt. They were both the same age and relatively young. But statistically, in all of the key measures, he's performing higher than Brandt. They talk about this thing called the aging curve. So they look at the current age and the statistics and the data and blah, blah, blah to predict what that player will be like as they age. And Mo was on a higher trajectory than Brandt was. And built into this model, and they can look and say, even if this player is playing in a different European league, does he fall above or below the bar for potential Premier League success? This is how detailed it gets. And Mo Salah was well above the Premier League average for potential success, and Julian Brandt was below him. And that's why we got Mo Salah. The other thing was, do you remember all the talk about Mo Salah was a failure at Chelsea? That caused other teams to not look at Mo Salah because he'd been a flop at Chelsea. But he wasn't a flop at Chelsea. He was 21 and he was behind Eden Hazard in the pecking order, and he was a youngster, and he was under Jose Mourinho, and Mourinho is renowned for not playing youngsters. He always goes with experience. So Mo Salah wasn't a failure. It was just circumstances. He was a young player behind one of the world's top players, playing for a manager who liked experience. So Chelsea moved him on. But Liverpool's analytical staff ignored all of that. While other people were looking at, oh, he didn't make it at Chelsea, Liverpool's analytics showed that he had every chance of succeeding at a high-level club, and that's another reason we got him, and no one else went for him. So I hope that gives you a flavour of just how brilliant this whole setup is. But one thing I want to mention, because this is important, and I did a video the other week about all of the good things FSG have done, but one of the things they don't get the credit for, it was FSG and John Henry who actually brought this model to Liverpool because they'd used it successfully in baseball. So as we all know, FSG brought Liverpool title success after 30 years and have since brought it to us again. As the owners of Boston Red Sox, they brought Boston Red Sox their first World Series title in baseball for 86 years by using the same type of analytical and statistical approach. 86 years. The Boston Red Sox had not won the World Series, and they did under FSG. 30 years we hadn't won it, and we did under FSG, because they brought the model in, and they brought the Ian Grahams in, and they brought the Michael Edwards and the Richard Hugheses in, and this is the result now. So in summary, we've got the best transfer policy, we've got the best transfer team, we've got the best use of science and data of any team in England, if not the world. We got the best use of data to bring in only elite players who are capable of playing for an elite manager at an elite level. We got the best team in England. We've got the best players in virtually every position on the field in England. And we got the best fans. And that's why we're the biggest and the best club in England. And there's so much more to come. You'll never walk alone. Cheers to that.